Hi, welcome to a brief tutorial on SAP Business Objects. Today we're going to discuss BI 4.0 Support Pack 2. So in this tutorial, we're going to look at the different reporting tools BO has to offer, the different source systems that can be connected, and we're going to create a universe, which is basically a communication link between the different source systems and the reporting tools. We're going to create all of its underlying components, and we're going to use that universe to create a web intelligence report and dashboard reports. We're going to also look at the features in both of those reporting tools. So let's get started and look at the different reporting tools BO has to offer. So we have Crystal Reports, Dashboards, Data Explorer, Web Intelligence, and BEX Analyzer. So the Crystal Reports and Dashboards are not installed along with the BO client tools. They have to be installed separately as per the requirement. So Crystal Reports is basically used for highly formatted pixel perfect reporting, and its main advantage is its high integration with other SAP reporting tools. The dashboards are for high impact data visualization reporting and highly interactive dashboards. And the Data Explorer is used to search for some data patterns in the underlying data providers. And the ad hoc reporting tool, the Web Intelligence, is widely used in BO, and its main advantages are we can use different source systems and create a single report out of it. This can be done by creating universes on the source systems. So we're going to see that today. And then the BEX Analyzer is the reporting tool delivered by SAP BW, and it's a multidimensional reporting tool. And the main advantages of that are its high drill down capabilities and navigational capabilities. So let's look at the data sources that can be used for business objects. So these are the list of data sources that can be connected to the business objects. Basically everything, any kind of database can be connected to a BO. So, but the native connection is SAP BW because they're both SAP delivered. So we have the SAP BW, the BEX queries, which are used 80 to 90% of the time, and then the BPC, RDMS, OLAP, XML, and others. So where does business objects fit? As we see in this diagram, the different source systems are connected to the business object server via a universe. It can be relational or OLAP according to the database. If it's a relational database, then we use a relational connection, and if it's a OLAP or a multidimensional table, we use a OLAP connection. We use an OLAP connection with BW mainly. So today we're going to discuss how to create a universe, all the underlying components in it, and how we can use the universe in the reporting tools. So the next one is about the BI platform. As we see in this diagram here, the platform mainly has the information design tool, and this is the application where we design the universe. It has different components called the business layer, the data foundation layer. Here is where we also define the connection to the source systems. So these are the steps to create a universe. First, we need to create a connection. And for this, we need to have a database, and then we need to create a connection, a ODBC connection via a driver to access the database. And then once the connection is made, we can create a data foundation layer based on that connection. And then we create a business layer based on the data foundation layer. And then once the business layer is done, we publish it, and that's the universe. So let's get into the system to see how we can accomplish this. So for the tutorial, I already have Access database installed on my C drive right here. So this is the Access database where I have my information. So to access that database, we have to create a ODBC connection. So let's go and open the ODBC application. So for that, we need to go to the C drive, Windows, and go to syswow 64, and then this one right here. So here is where we create user data sources, system data sources, and all that. So here I've already created a system data source. So how do we do that? We just say add, and then since mine is access database, I go for the access database driver, which is this one right here. And then I hit finish, and this is where it comes up. So I'm going to use the top one in this tutorial. So once that is done, okay, let's go to the information design tool, and where we access that is once you install the business objects. So you go to start programs, and then you go to SAP Business Objects BI platform 4 client tools, and you have all these installed with BO. This is the web intelligence rich client we're going to use shortly, and then this is the information design tool. So once you click on it, since I'm not connected to a server, I'm going to use the standalone option for the web intelligence reports. So this is how it looks. So you have 3 panes. This is for the local projects, and this is the repository resources. And the reason I don't have any connections or projects here is because I don't have a server connection. But if in real time you will have to access the BO server, and it will be installed here. And then I've just opened up the different business layers and the data foundation layers, but if nothing is there, it is a blank place to work with. It's a workspace. So anyways, and we can switch off and switch on any panes we need. We have those options. So let's go. Initially we go about creating a project. And why is this? Because that's where all the information about the universe is stored. It's locally stored on your PC. So let's say create. Let's go to file, new project. So I'm going to name this project BO tutorial. Okay, so and say finish. So you see that it's storing it in a local workspace on my C drive. So I say finish, and then you see there's nothing underneath. So what you can do is, now the first thing is you say I want a connection. The reason we have 2 connections, the relational connection and the OLAP connection. We use the relational connection for relational tables. Access database is a relational database, so we use relational connection here. But if you use SAP BW, which is a OLAP, then we go for a OLAP connection. Anyway, so it's asking for a resource name. So I'm going to say BO connection, BOCon, and we need to give a good description about the connection. Your tutorial test connection to access database. Okay, and then it gives us a list of all the driver selections, and you have all these drivers here. We have go to Microsoft Access 2007 ODBC drivers. So and then it asks me for a username and password, which is not required because it's on my local PC. This is the one because I just deleted the test, so I know it wouldn't work. So this is successful. So once that is done, we go to the next, and here are some parameters we can use, and then yeah, that's it. The connection is defined. So once you click on the connection, you can see all the properties here. So you can edit and change the things, the data source name whenever, if it's required, and you can change the driver here, and you can test the connection here as well. So once the connection is done, the next thing we need to do is once the connection has been done, we have to create a data foundation layer. So what I did is the information in my Access database is nothing but I have two files in there. One is the account master data, and the next one is the transaction data. So okay, let's go ahead and create a data foundation layer. For this, we need to click on the project, right click, say new data foundation. It's right below the OLAP connection. So yeah, so once you click on that, it asks for name, tutorial. I'm gonna say BODF. It's BO data foundation layer. Okay, next. So it's going to ask you if it's a single source or some multi-source. The difference between that is if the universe is accessing a single database, or it's accessing several databases, which is also possible. So here we are using only one database, that is the Access database. So we're going to say single source, then click next. So then it asks me to select a connection here. So the only connection that is defined for this project is this, and it gives me that option. So I hit check it and then say finish. So now the data foundation layer appears here, and then let's click on that. So once that is there, so these are the two tables in the database. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag it and drop it here. This is my workspace. So as I said earlier, that the data foundation layer is where we define the connections and the joins in between the database tables. So these are our database tables, and we are going to create a join now. So since I know the data, this is the transaction data and this is the master data. So the join can be, let's make it easy. So just make a drag and drop thing from the account source in the master data. Actually, you know what, I'm going to flip it here. So the account in the transaction data is equal to the account in the master data. So it gives us those question marks because it's asking us to define the join. So I know that the account in the transaction data is equal to the account in the master data, so I say equal, but there are other options as well. So yeah, and there are two different joins. The shortcut join is nothing but if an account exists in both the tables, only then a record is created. But if it's an outer join, then what it does is it takes all the accounts on the left hand side, and even though it doesn't have the same account information in the right hand table, it still gives me a record. So yeah, so that's how it works. And then once we define that, an expression is created here which can be validated here, and then we go to the cardinality which the system has the ability to detect. So it basically goes with the select statement and defines the cardinality. So let's click that. So once I click that, it says each row in transaction source matches one and only one in the account source. Each row in account source matches 0 or more rows in transaction source. Okay, so it's like each row in account source. So the master data has one or more accounts in the transaction data, which is makes sense. So once that is done, you hit OK, and then the data foundation layer is done. So then you go to save, or you can go here and say save all. So once that is done, the next step is to create the business layer. And for that, you go to new and hit business layer. And then it's asking you for the type of data source. Here it's relational. And then next, say BOBL, BO tutorial business layer on BODF. So the more information you use to describe the resource, the more useful it is, because to avoid confusion. And then it asks you for the data foundation. We see that when we are creating a data foundation, it asked us for a connection. Now when we are creating a business layer, it's asking for a data foundation layer. So we go ahead and click on the BODF, and then instead of the system automatically creates classes and objects, but here I'm going to uncheck it so we can do it ourselves. And next hit finish. So this is the business layer, and it's also showing us the data foundation associated with that business layer. So what we can do here is so let's go to the business layer. We see that the data foundation layer appears on the right hand side, and a business layer is basically the layer which is visible to the user. So whatever dimensions are defined here, those are the ones the user can use for reporting. So what are the objects that we can put in the business layer? We can use all the objects from the transaction data source and the account data source. We can input them, or we can use a simple functionality of drag and drop, so it brings across all the dimensions to the business layer. But since here we don't have any technical names used, we can directly do the drag and drop. But if you want to input it manually, this is what we do. We go to the business layer and say new folder. We can use folders to differentiate between dimensions and measures. When I say dimensions, I mean characteristics which define the measures, and the measures are nothing but amount fields or quantity fields. So this is the one I dragged from the transaction source table directly on the business layer. I'm going to do the same one for the account as well. So these are here. But if you see here, we see that amount, if you see, it's defined as a not a measure. It is defined as a dimension, which is not right. So it also gives us a option which says turn into measure. So amount is now a measure field. So if you want to manually input it, what we can do is we can say new folder and then new dimension within that folder, and then you double click on it and then it gives us this properties. So here we can, say account, or yeah, you can say account GL, and then we go to the select statement here and go to the SQL assistant, and we can select the account here, say OK. But there's also a place where we can define a where clause, account where cost center equal to 1000. We have the means to get in all that information. So once you define these, this is the business layer which will be visible to the user. So once the business layer is done, you click on the business layer. First you click a save all. I already did, so it grayed out. So you hit, after hitting save, you go to the business layer and say publish. Actually what I'm going to do is delete this new folder here because I just showed it for the tutorial purpose, because we already have the account in the transaction source folder here. So I go to the business layer and say publish. Since I don't have a server connected, I am going to say publish it to a local folder. But if you have a server connected, you can say to a repository. Yeah, but for that you need to convert this connection into a secure connection. If you have a server attached, you cannot directly access a ordinary connection. You have to make it secure. So you say publish connection to a repository, and then so you define the server details here, and that's how it gets secure. So once it gets secure, the connection gets secure, it appears in the repository. So since we don't have a server attached and we're not going to publish it to the repository, we're going to publish it to the local folder. So we say publish to a local folder, and then here you can check all, then say next, and this is the local folder where I'm going to actually say business objects. I'm going to use this one instead of the other one. So hit OK, then say finish. So it says your universe was published successfully. Set close. So this is the main application where we define the universe, and so once the business layer is published, it stores it as a universe, and since we don't have a server, we have it stored on the C drive. So we can access that in a web intelligence report. So to open up a web intelligence report, we go to start programs, SAP BO, client tools, and web intelligence rich client. So when it opens up, it gives us an option to choose from the different data sources which can be connected to Webby. So one of that is a universe, which we can see right here. These are all the recently used universes, and we can also use a BEX query based on a SAP BW system as a data source to a web intelligence report. We can use an Excel file, a report on analysis view, a text file, a web services file. So I already opened up the business layer or the universe we just created, but I'm going to go ahead and do it again. So I'm going to hit browse here and select the universe we just created, which I stored under here. I'm going to change this to a UNV file because universe is stored as a UNX file once it is published. So I say open, and then it's asking me for a server details. Since I'm not connected to a server, I'm going to just say standalone. So log on. A web intelligence report is basically an ad hoc reporting tool where the user has the convenience of using all the elements in the universe to create his own report based on different filters, and he can also view the data in different graphical views. So let's go and create a simple Webby report. So I'm going to say account, company code, and amount. So these are three panes we have in the business intelligence tool. So this is where we place all the elements we want to see in our report, and this is a filter section where we can have a element with a where clause. So if I say, okay, let's just run this report first. Before we run the report, if you want to see the data, we can just use the refresh here, and we can see a preview of the data. So yeah, and then when we run the query, it renders it here, right here. So if you want to go ahead and edit the report, we can say edit, and it shows up the screen again. So we just saw a report with all the company codes. So if we want to filter the company code to, let's say, 1000, so this is where we do it. So we just say company code equal to 1000, and then when we hit refresh, we see that it's only bringing company code 1000. Let's go ahead and run the query. So this is the report we get. Yeah, so there are different things we can do here. Instead of just saying equal to, we can use all these expressions. We can also have, instead of a constant, we can have values from list. And then if you refresh, you get all the company codes, and we can select anything here, and then we know that that's what's going to show up in the report. Let's do a refresh here. So yeah, only 1030 is being displayed. So the another one is a prompt. So a prompt is nothing but selection criteria which we give to the user. So a user can select any of the values listed in the prompt to see the data for that report. So let's go and run the query. So yeah, this is the prompt. So it's asking the user what company codes data do you want to see in the report. So I say 1010. So it filters the data accordingly. So one more feature, there are many features here. I mean, as you can see, we have a formatting tab where you can go and format your report, and data access where you can create new variables. And the interesting thing is controls. This is let's go and create a control. Say control. So input control is nothing but somewhat like a prompt, but it is visible on the report. So you don't have to refresh your query to enter a value. We have it on the left hand side here. Let's go and do one. So we say I want to input control for company code, and it asks us, I mean, do you want a combo box or entry field, a radio button, or a list box? For this example, let's go for a combo box, and here is the properties. So we can select the properties, and we're gonna just keep it simple, and we're gonna say, okay, this input control is going to affect what? So if I say block 1, that means all these block will be affected by the input control specified. So I say finish, and see, I mean, this is where it shows me all the values of the company code. So but here we just see 1010 because we already have a filter here. So the reason we have just 1010 here is because we specified it on the prompt screen. So let's go ahead and delete the prompt and then run the query again. So now we see that it shows us all the company codes. So that's one feature. And then another interesting feature is when you want to see this data in a graphical view, which is a pie chart or a chart, or let's do a chart here. So we have different charts we can choose from. I'm going to choose the column chart and just drag it to the report field, and it asks me where I want to place it. So I say okay. So once it's placed, we can specify or assign data to it. So just right click and say assign data. So it asks me, what element do you want to place on the x-axis. I'm going to say company code, and on the y-axis it's going to be my amount. So I say okay, and so easily it gives me a chart like this. And yeah, you can see the amount has negative values, so it gives me this graph here. So you can just play with all these options here. So one more thing is you can just hit here and say, I want to turn it into a pie chart, if that makes sense. That's what's so yeah, I mean, if it's just company code and amount, it would have been a much good looking pie chart. But what we can do is we have an option to undo, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to just drag this out. So I'm going to hit this part right here, and I'm going to drag the account out. So now I'm just left with company codes and amount. Let's now turn it into a pie chart, or yeah. So let's undo it and then turn it into vertical table. It's a vertical table already, so yeah, a horizontal table. You can play with it with the different options, and yeah, it doesn't make sense because it doesn't have a third dimension for a cross table. And then we also so let's turn it into a vertical table here, and then we can also use something called sections, where it divides the report into sections. So for that, I'm going to drag in the account here, so it makes more sense. And then I hit on the values and say set as section. So what it does is it divides the report into sections based on the value selected. So I hit some values on the company code, and I said set as section. So it basically sections the report based on each of the company codes. So 1000 has all those accounts with the associated amounts, and so it is with the rest of the amounts. So we see that the graph is also sectioned into the different company codes. So that's one feature. So these are some of the features in a web intelligence report. We also have 3 modes in this report. So the first one is the reading mode, where it displays the report in a read mode where you cannot do much design. We have all these options here, but the design mode has much more options where we can play with the data and use all the other options we have available. And then the data mode is where it displays the data about the query. So this is about the Web Intelligence report. We are going to see the dashboard reports now. So let's open up the dashboard designer. For this, we go to start programs and dashboard designer. So we see that it's not under the client tools because it doesn't get installed with the other client tools. We have to install it separately as per the requirement. So we hit on dashboard designer, and this is what opens up. And then it gives us the option to create a dashboard report from a blank model, from a spreadsheet, from a model with spreadsheet data, or a model from template. So we can do this as well because BO has delivered templates which we can use. So we can use the template and assign our data. So it's going to look like this, but the data would be different. So, but today we're going to just create it from a blank model. So once you click on it, this is what opens up, and this blank area is where we create our report. It's called the canvas area, and whatever components are in our report space, the properties of that component, whatever is clicked, shows up on the right hand pane. And then the spreadsheet here is where we can have data to be used in the components, and these are the different components delivered by BO. And we see that the object browser is nothing but, let's say, if I have a line chart here, so the object browser just gives us all the components we have in that particular report. So we can hide it or we can lock it. So if we lock it, we can't even drag it up. So yeah, I'm gonna unlock it. So that's the object browser, and the query browser is nothing but, if you have a universe, you can build queries on it like we did in Webby and use those queries as data to the components here. So, and we can also use the spreadsheet data and use manual data and use that data in our components. So let's get started and create a simple report where we have a selector, let's say a combo box, where the values selected in the drop down here should reflect appropriate data in the line chart. So let's create some data in the spreadsheet. So I'm going to say Chicago York and California, and let's have some companies here: Ford, Nissan, and Toyota. I'm taking very simple examples, so it's much easier to understand. So I'm giving some. Okay, so this is the data, and so let's click on the properties of the combo box. So first it's asking me for a title, so I'm going to say select a region, and then it's asking me where does the labels, like where are the values for this combo box. So I'm going to hit this and say these are the values. So if you hit a preview now, you can actually see the 3 values, and then there are other properties as well. So why we are using this combo box is, according to the value selected, I want this information to be displayed on the chart. So we're going to have this as the x-axis and these the y-axis. So what we're going to do is, according to the row selected, the value selected in the combo box, I want that particular row to be displayed on the line chart. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say I want the whole row to be inserted, where I'm going to have a separate destination area, and then yeah, like 4 rows along with the label. I'm going to color it yellow. So it's asking me for a source data. So where is all your source data? So my source data is nothing but all this. I say okay, and then I'm saying please place the destination in this row, because I've chosen row as the insertion type. So I say okay, and then yeah, I need this option because there is a data change and interaction. So let's hit preview. I mean, we have to also go and check the properties on the line chart. So we go to the line chart here, and we're going to rename the title. This is where you specify the titles. It says titles, and here is where we configure the data. So the chart can be named revenue by region. The subtitle would be USD in millions, and you can also name the x-axis and the y-axis. I'm going to just leave it for now. And then we usually use the data by series, and then we're going to say add a series, and we can name the series revenue, yeah, or company, because it's going to show the company. And the y-axis, so the y-axis would be, so the y-axis would be the values in the destination cell. So I'm going to select the destination cell. It's actually just going to be this. Okay. And then the x-axis would be my company's. Okay. So let's go ahead and run this report to see how we're doing. So we see that when we click on Chicago, the values on the graph changes. So you hit New York, and then it has a different, so it's interactive based on the value selected. So let's see what else we can do. So yeah, so we can use, instead of a combo box, we can also use a map, because there are different regions. We can use a map and display the regions on a map. So, and let's use the different maps. We're going to use the US continental map here. Yeah. So what we can do is we can just arrange our components here. So yeah, so let's see the properties of the map. So we're going to call it USA continental. So it's asking me for the region keys. So the regions are these. Say okay. And then what is the display data? So the display data will still be the 3. And then the region keys is where you have to organize according to the already specified regions. So it has taken the wrong places. So I'm going to just delete this here and place it in Illinois. Sorry, there's Chicago, and then place New York here. This is very important because the system needs to know what state goes where. And then it is Chicago, New York, and California. So once that is done, so yeah, so insertion type. So for the insertion type, we select row, and then for the source data, we select all this data over here, and the destination would be the same as the combo box. So once this is done, we run the report to see how it looks. And we see that the regions are highlighted, and as we click the region, the graph changes. So we can either use this or we can use the other one, and there are several other options to beautify the look. So we have the appearance here, where we can use all these options to modify the text, the color, the layout, and we can also specify alerts on every object. So as I said earlier, as per the requirement, you can learn each of the component and use it accordingly. So the other thing I want to mention is that the data for the dashboard designer can be manual. It can be through a universe. Since I'm not connected to a universe server right now, so I'm not able to specify a universe, but once you specify the server details, it shows you all the universes, and you can use a simple drag and drop functionality to specify what elements you need, and all those elements and the data will be displayed in the spreadsheet, and you will use the same method to assign the data in the spreadsheet to the components, and then thereby have good interactive reporting in dashboards. So the topics covered in this tutorial are the different reporting tools in BO, the universe and its underlying components. We also used a universe to create a web intelligence report. We looked at the different features of Webby. We used a dashboard designer, and we looked at the different features in a dashboard designer. So this concludes the tutorial on BO. Thank you.